Jake Martinez checked his uniform one more time as the shuttle moved toward the space station. His hands were steady, but inside he felt nervous. This was the most important day in human history. Today, humans would meet the Galactic Federation. For the first time, the space station hung in the darkness between stars. It was built around a dead planet that nobody wanted. The perfect place for a meeting between strangers who didn't trust each other yet. 5 minutes until docking, Captain Lisa Stone said from the pilot's seat. She had flown missions into dangerous space before, but never anything like this. "You ready for this, Jake?" Jake nodded. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He knew how to stay calm when things got scary. As ready as anyone can be for first contact with aliens. Commander Ben Clark sat behind them with 3 other security officers. All of them carried weapons, but they hoped they wouldn't need them. The Federation had agreed that both sides could bring protection. The humans brought soldiers. The Federation was bringing something else. "Remember what we learned about there." "Bodyguard," Clark said quietly. "The reports say it's from a species called the Drakmori. They're supposed to be the best hunters in the galaxy." Jake had read those reports. The Drakmori were 8 feet tall with thick skin like armor. They had claws that could cut through metal and eyes that could see in complete darkness. Other alien species hired them as bodyguards because nothing in the galaxy was more dangerous. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Jake took a deep breath and stood up. Everything they had worked for came down to the next few hours. If this meeting went well, humans could join the galactic community. If it went badly, they might find themselves at war with species they had never even seen. The airlock opened with a hiss. Jake walked through first, with Clark and his team close behind. The station's central chamber was huge, with a glass dome that showed the stars outside. In the center of the room stood 3 figures waiting for them. The first was clearly the alien diplomat. Ambassador Veltar was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like green metal. His large eyes moved constantly, watching everything at once. Jake had studied pictures of the Zephyrian species, but seeing one in person was still strange. The second figure was smaller, probably another Zephyrian assistant. But it was the third figure that made Jake's heart beat faster. The Drakmori bodyguard was even bigger than the reports had said. Crix stood perfectly still, but Jake could see the powerful muscles under his dark-scaled skin. His yellow eyes fixed on Jake the moment he entered the room. Those eyes reminded Jake of a snake watching a mouse. "Ambassador Veltar," Jake said, walking forward with his hand extended. "I'm Jake Martinez, representing Earth and humanity. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." The Zephyrian diplomat looked at Jake's hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his 4 arms. His grip was surprisingly gentle. "The honor is ours, Ambassador Martinez. We have watched your species with great interest." Jake smiled, feeling some of his nervousness fade away. This was going better than he had hoped. Then he noticed that the Drakmori bodyguard was still staring at him. Those yellow eyes had not looked away for even a second. "This is Crix," Ambassador Veltar said, noticing Jake's glance. "He is my protection specialist. The finest the galaxy has to offer." Jake nodded toward the massive alien. "Nice to meet you, Crix." The Drakmori said nothing. He just kept staring. Jake started to feel uncomfortable. Had he done something wrong already? Then Crix did something that shocked everyone in the room. He took a step backward, away from Ambassador Veltar. Away from his job. "I cannot do this," Crix said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The translator device on his chest turned his words into English. "My contract is void." Ambassador Veltar's 4 eyes went wide. "What? Crix, what are you talking about?" "I cannot guard you against this one," Crix said, pointing at Jake. I will not stay in the same room as him. Jake felt his stomach drop. What had he done? He looked at Captain Stone and Commander Clark. They looked just as confused as he felt. I don't understand, Jake said. Have I offended you somehow? I haven't even spoken to you yet. Crix's yellow eyes fixed on Jake again. The big alien's whole body was tense, like he was ready to run or fight. You have done nothing wrong, human. That is exactly the problem. Ambassador Veltar stepped between them. Crix, you have never broken a contract before. Not once in 20 years of service. What is happening here? In 20 years, I have never met anything like him, Crix said. His claws extended slightly, a sign of stress that Jake recognized from his briefing materials. I have protected clients from void stalkers. I have stood guard against Titan crushers. I have faced the deadliest predators in the galaxy without fear. Jake waited, hardly breathing. But this one, Crix continued, his voice getting quieter, this one is different. He does not hunt for food. He does not hunt for territory. He hunts for reasons I cannot understand. Reasons that terrify me. The room fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Captain Stone's hand moved slowly toward her weapon. Commander. Clark was ready to act if this went bad. Ambassador. Veltar looked back and forth between his bodyguard and the human diplomat. Crix, please explain yourself. We have prepared for this meeting for months. Crix shook his head. I cannot explain. What I do not fully understand myself. I only know that every instinct I have tells me to run from this place. To put as much distance as possible between myself and the human. Jake found his voice. I'm just a diplomat. I'm here to talk, not to fight. That, Crix said, is what makes you so dangerous. With that, the massive Drakmori turned and walked toward the exit. Ambassador Veltar called after him, but Crix did not stop. He paused only at the doorway to look back at Jake one more time. Good luck, Ambassador Veltar, Crix said. You will need it. Then he was gone, leaving behind a room full of confused aliens and humans. Jake stared at the empty doorway, trying to understand what had just happened. The most feared predator in the galaxy had taken one look at him and run away, and Jake had no idea why. The silence in the room felt heavy. Jake stared at the doorway where Crix had disappeared. Ambassador Veltar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. I apologize, Veltar said finally. This has never happened before. Crix is known throughout the galaxy for his loyalty and professionalism. Captain Stone stepped forward. Maybe we should take a break. Give everyone time to think about what just happened. Veltar nodded quickly. Yes, that would be wise. We will return to our quarters and try to contact Crix. Perhaps there is some misunderstanding. The alien delegation left through one door, while the humans went through another. Jake felt like the meeting was falling apart before it had really started. Back in their quarters, Commander Clark paced back and forth. I don't like this, Jake. That thing looked at you like you were some kind of monster. I'm not a monster, Jake said, but he didn't sound sure of himself. I'm just a guy from Texas who learned how to talk to people. Dr. Amy Foster sat quietly in the corner, studying her tablet. She was the team's expert on alien biology and behavior. I'd like to talk to that Drakmori, she said suddenly. Clark stopped pacing. Are you crazy? He just said Jake was too dangerous to be around. Exactly, Amy said, and I want to know why. His species has evolved to recognize threats. If he sees something in humans that we don't see ourselves, we need to understand what it is. Jake thought about this. You think it's safe? I think it's necessary, Amy replied. We can't fix a problem if we don't understand it. An hour later, Amy found herself in a small meeting room with Crix. The big alien sat across from her, but he kept looking toward the door. His claws tapped nervously on the metal table. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me," Amy said. "I know this must be difficult." Crix's yellow eyes focused on her. "You are not him. You are dangerous in your own way, but not like he is." "What do you mean?" Crix was quiet for a long moment. "My species can sense things about other creatures. We can tell how dangerous they are, what kind of predator they might be. It keeps us alive." Amy nodded. "Like an early warning system." "Yes, when I look at most species, I see their nature clearly. The Zephyrians are smart but weak. The Void Stalkers are strong but stupid. The Titan Crushers are powerful but slow. Each species has a way of hunting, a way of killing. I understand these things, but not humans." Crix's head tilted slightly. "When I look at your diplomat, I see something that should not exist. He registers as the most dangerous predator I have ever encountered. But that is not the worst part." Amy leaned forward. "What's the worst part?" "He does not know he is a predator," Crix said. "He thinks he is just talking, just making friends. He has no idea what he really is." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you think he really is?" Crix stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, stars twinkled in the darkness. "Tell me about your species' history, Dr. Foster. How did humans survive on your world?" Amy was surprised by the question. "We adapted. We learned. We overcame challenges." "What kind of challenges?" "Ice ages, diseases, natural disasters, wars. We've survived a lot of things that could have killed us." Crix nodded slowly. "And how did you survive these things?" "We studied them. We figured out how they worked. Then we found ways to beat them or live with them." "Exactly," Crix said, turning back to face her. "You hunt problems, not for food, not for territory. You hunt until you understand. And once you understand something completely, you become better at it than the thing you were hunting." Amy felt, her heart beating faster. "I'm not sure I follow." "Your species does not just adapt to environments," Crix explained. "You master them. You do not just survive diseases. You eliminate them. You do not just endure natural disasters. You predict them and control them." "We just try to solve problems," Amy said. "That is what makes you terrifying," Crix replied. "Other species hunt to eat or to defend themselves. You hunt to understand. And there is no limit to what you will try to understand." Amy thought about Earth's history. Humans had indeed solved problem after problem. They had turned deserts into farms. They had cured diseases that had killed millions. They had even left their planet and spread to the stars. "You're saying we're too good at solving problems?" "I am saying you do not stop," Crix said. "When a Void Stalker kills its prey, it eats and then it sleeps. When a Titan Crusher defeats an enemy, it claims territory and then it rests. But humans? You solve one problem and immediately start looking for the next one." Amy remembered something. From her own childhood, her father had been a mechanic. He was always taking things apart to see how they worked, even things that weren't broken. "So you think we'll try to solve you too?" Crix's claws extended slightly. "I think your diplomat will not be satisfied until he understands everything about the Galactic Federation, every species, every technology, every secret. He will study us like we are problems to be solved. And then he will become better at being us than we are," Crix said quietly. "That is what humans do. You do not just learn about things. You improve on them." Amy felt a strange mix of pride and worry. "Is that really so bad?" Crix looked at her for a long moment. "For 20 years, I have been the perfect bodyguard. I know exactly how to protect my clients from any threat in the galaxy. But I cannot protect Ambassador Veltar from someone who will study me until he knows how to be a better bodyguard than I am. You think Jake will replace you? I think your entire species will replace all of us, Crick said. Not through violence, not through conquest. You will simply become better versions of us than we ever were. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian quarters, Ambassador Veltar was having his own conversation. He was speaking to the Federation Council through a secure communication link. The Drakmori's behavior is unprecedented, he reported. In 200 years of employing their species as bodyguards, nothing like this has ever happened. The voice from the communicator was cold and mechanical. What is your assessment of the human threat level? Veltar looked at his notes. They seem peaceful enough. Their diplomat appears genuine in his desire for friendship. But there are disturbing reports from our monitoring stations near human colonies, Veltar admitted. These humans do not simply survive in new environments. They thrive. They take worlds that should be impossible to live on and turn them into gardens. Elaborate. The colony on Kepler 442b was established on a world with constant acid rain. Within 6 months, the humans had not only found a way to neutralize the acid, but were using it as fertilizer for their crops. There was silence from the communicator. On Proxima 7, they encountered predatory plants that had prevented any settlement for 300 years. The humans domesticated them and now use them as guard animals. More silence. Council, I believe we may have underestimated this species. They do not just adapt to challenges. They master them completely. Continue the negotiations, the Council finally said. But be very careful, Ambassador. If the Drakmori is right, we may be dealing with something far more dangerous than we realized. Back in the human quarters, Jake sat alone, thinking about what had happened. He had spent his whole life learning how to understand people. It was what made him good at his job. But maybe that was exactly the problem. Maybe being good at understanding people was more dangerous than anyone had realized. Dr. Amy Foster found Crix in the station's observation deck the next morning. A massive alien stood alone, staring out at the stars. He looked smaller somehow, less dangerous than before. Mind if I join you? Amy asked. Krix turned his head. Slightly. You are persistent, Dr. Foster. That is very human of you. Amy walked over to stand beside him at the window. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about humans hunting problems, and I want to understand something. You say my species is dangerous because we solve problems too well. But isn't solving problems a good thing? Crix was quiet for a moment. Tell me, Doctor, what happens when you solve all the problems? Amy frowned. I don't understand. On your world, what did humans do after they cured the major diseases? We started working on smaller diseases, genetic conditions, mental illness, and after you mastered farming, we developed better crops, more efficient growing methods. And after, you learned to fly? Amy began to see where this was going. We built better aircraft, then spacecraft. You see, Crix said, you never stop. You solve one problem and immediately create new ones to solve. You push boundaries that other species leave alone. Amy thought about this. You're saying we're too curious? I'm saying you are driven to understand everything, even things that perhaps should not be understood. Crix activated a wall display showing a star map. Let me show you something that concerns the Federation Council. The map highlighted several star systems. These are worlds near human colonies. Watch what happens when I show the timeline. The display changed, showing the progression of human settlement over the past 50 years. Amy watched as human colonies spread from system to system. But it wasn't the expansion that caught her attention. It was what happened to the worlds themselves. This planet had toxic oceans, Crix said, pointing to one system. Poisonous to all known life. The humans arrived, and within 2 years, they had not only cleaned the oceans, but made them more fertile than most garden worlds. Another system lit up. This one had gravity 3 times Earth normal. Should have been impossible for humans to survive. They didn't just survive. They thriving. There and are now stronger and faster than baseline humans. A third system appeared. Constant radiation storms. The humans developed technology to harness the radiation as a power source. They now export energy to 12 other worlds. Amy stared at the display. She had known humans were good at adapting, but seeing it laid out like this was impressive. And scary. You make it sound like a bad thing, she said. It is not bad, Crix replied. It is terrifying. Look at this world. A new system appeared on the display. The planet looked dead, brown, and lifeless. The Altarians tried to colonize this world for 200 years. The soil was too acidic, the weather too harsh, the native life too aggressive. They finally gave up and declared it uninhabitable. Amy waited. Humans arrived 3 years ago. Look at it now. The display updated to show the current state of the planet. Green continents were visible from space. Cities dotted the surface. Orbital stations surrounded the world. How? Amy whispered. They studied the aggressive native life and learned to communicate with it. They turned the creatures into partners instead of enemies. The acidic soil? They used it to grow new types of plants that actually prefer acid. The harsh weather? They built cities that used the storms for power. Amy felt a mix of pride and unease. That's just good problem solving. No, Crix said firmly. That is beyond problem solving. That is problem hunting. Your species does not wait for problems to find you. You seek them out. He changed the display again. This time, it showed a graph with different species marked on it. This measures how much a species changes its environment versus how much it adapts to fit the environment. Most species find a balance somewhere in the middle. Amy could see dots representing different alien species clustered around the center of the graph. Where are humans on this chart? She asked, though she was starting to suspect the answer. Crix pointed to a dot far off the scale. You do not adapt to environments. You remake them completely. And you do it so well that other species cannot compete. Amy studied the chart. We're not trying to hurt anyone. That is exactly what makes you so dangerous, Crix said. A species that conquers through violence, we can understand. We can fight violence. But how do you fight someone who makes everything better? Before Amy could answer, her communicator buzzed. It was Jake. Amy, we need you in the main conference room. Something's happened. Amy found Jake, Captain Stone, and Commander Clark gathered around a display screen. Ambassador Veltar was there too, along with his assistant. Everyone looked worried. What's going on? Amy asked. Jake pointed to the screen. We just received a message from the Federation. Council. They want to discuss what they're calling the human situation. The screen showed the message. Amy read it quickly. Her heart sank as she reached the end. They're considering declaring humanity a threat to galactic stability, she said. Based on what? Captain Stone asked. Ambassador Veltar spoke up. Based on reports from observation. Posts near your colonies. The Council is concerned about your species' rate of technological and environmental advancement. We're just trying to build good homes for our people, Jake said. I understand that, Veltar replied. But from the Council's perspective, your colonies represent an unprecedented threat to the galactic ecosystem. Commander Clark crossed his arms. Ecosystem? The balance of power between species, Veltar explained. For thousands of years, different species have specialized in different areas. The Zephyrians are scientists and diplomats. The Titan species handle heavy construction. The Drakmori provide security. Each species has its role. Amy was beginning to understand. And humans? Humans appear to be able to do everything, Veltar said quietly. Better than the species that specialize in those areas. Jake sat down. Heavily. So they see us as a threat because we're too good at solving problems. They see you as a threat because you don't seem to have any limits, Veltar replied. Every other species in the galaxy has things they cannot do, environments they cannot survive in, problems they cannot solve. You appear to have none of these limitations. Captain Stone looked at the star map, still showing on Crix's display. So what happens now? Now, Veltar said, the Council will decide whether humanity should be allowed to join the Federation, be restricted to your current territory, or be classified as a hostile species. The room fell silent. Amy looked around. At her teammates. They had come here hoping to make friends with the galaxy. Instead, they had discovered that their greatest strength might be their greatest weakness. There has to be something we can do, Jake said finally. There is, said a deep voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Crix standing there. They. Big Alien walked into the room slowly. I have been thinking, he said, about what makes humans dangerous, and about what might make them valuable instead. Jake stood up. I'm listening. Crix looked around the room at all the faces watching him. The Council fears you because they do not understand you. They see your abilities, but not your intentions. What do you suggest? Amy asked. I suggest, Crix said, that you do what humans do best. Hunt the problem. But this time, hunt it together with us. Ambassador Veltar leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, Crix said, give humanity a problem that the Federation has never been able to solve. Let them prove that their problem hunting can benefit everyone, not just themselves. Jake felt a spark of hope. What kind of problem? Crix and Ambassador Veltar exchanged a look. There is something, Veltar said slowly. Something the Federation has been struggling with for 400 years. But it's dangerous. Many species have tried to solve it. Several have gone extinct in the attempt. What is it? Jake asked. Veltar hesitated, then activated his communicator. I need to speak with the Council first. If we're going to do this, we'll need their permission. As they waited for the Council's response, Amy looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a problem that had stumped the entire Galactic Federation for centuries. She found herself getting excited, if there was. One thing humans were good at, it was taking on impossible challenges. The Federation Council's response came 3 hours later. Ambassador Veltar read the message with all 4 of his eyes, his expression growing more serious with each line. They have agreed, he said finally, but they want to be very clear about the terms. Jake leaned forward. What terms? If humanity can solve the Kepler plague without making the situation worse, the Federation will continue negotiations for full membership. If you fail, or if your attempt causes more problems, humanity will agree to remain within your current borders for 100 years. Captain Stone whistled low. Those are high stakes. What exactly is the Kepler plague? Dr. Amy Foster asked. Veltar activated the wall display. A star system appeared, but something was wrong with it. The planets looked fuzzy, distorted, as if the image was corrupted. 400 years ago, the Kepler system was home to 3 billion people across 5 planets, a thriving center of trade and culture. Then the plague arrived. The display changed to show what the system looked like now. The planets were clearer, but they were completely empty. No cities, no ships, no signs of life at all. What happened to everyone? Jake asked quietly. They fled, Veltar said. Those who could. The plague doesn't just kill biological life. It infects technology, energy patterns, even quantum fields. It spreads through anything that carries information. Amy studied the readings on the display. It infects information itself? That's the best way we can describe it, Veltar replied. Ships that enter the system become infected. Their computers fail. Their life support breaks down. Their navigation systems turn against them. Even quantum communicators stop working correctly. Commander Clark frowned. But you can still observe the system from outside. From a distance, yes. But any probe or ship that gets too close becomes part of the plague. We've lost over 200 vessels to it over the centuries. Crix spoke up from his position near the wall. 17 different species have attempted to solve the plague. The Corvani were experts in quantum mechanics. The plague consumed their entire research fleet. The Deneb Collective were masters of information technology. They sent their best scientists. None returned. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. What makes the Federation think humans might succeed where others have failed? Honestly? Veltar sighed. We don't think you will succeed. The Council believes this will prove that humans, like every other species, have limits. Amy felt a familiar stirring of excitement. It was the same feeling she got when facing a really challenging research problem. Tell me more about how it spreads. That's just it, Veltar said. We don't really understand how it spreads. It seems to follow different rules each time. Sometimes it moves through electromagnetic signals. Sometimes through physical contact. Sometimes it appears to jump from one system to another with no connection at all. Have you tried? Amy began, but Jake held up a hand. Wait, he said. Before we start planning, I need to make a call. Jake activated his communicator and contacted Earth. The conversation that followed surprised everyone in the room. General. Hudson, it's Jake Martinez. I need you to send me some people. No, not soldiers. I need scientists, philosophers, artists, maybe some engineers and a few teachers. Yes, I'm serious. Trust me on this one. He closed the connection and turned back to the group. If we're going to hunt this problem, we're going to do it the human way. What's the human way? Crix asked. We throw everything at it, Jake said. Every type of thinking we have. Every way of looking at problems. 2 days later, 5 more human ships arrived at the station. But instead of military vessels, they were research ships and civilian transports. Jake watched through the observation. Window as shuttle after shuttle docked with the station. Dr. Sandra Chun was a quantum physicist from MIT. Professor Robert Kim taught philosophy at Stanford. Maria Santos was an artist who specialized in interactive sculptures. Dr. James Wright was a marine biologist who studied deep ocean ecosystems. Lisa Murphy was a primary school teacher from Iowa. Ambassador Veltar looked confused as he watched. The humans gather in the main conference room. I don't understand. We told you this was a technological problem. Why did you bring a teacher and an artist? Jake smiled. Because we don't know what kind of problem it really is yet. So we brought every kind of problem solver we have. Dr. Chun was already studying the data about the Kepler plague. The infection patterns are interesting, she said. They don't follow normal rules of physics. Maybe that's because it's not following physics, said Professor Kim. Maybe it's following some other kind of logic entirely. Maria Santos was sketching something on her tablet. The pattern of spread reminds me of how rumors move through social networks. Not linear, but jumping around based on connections we can't see. Dr. Wright nodded. Like how diseases spread in marine ecosystems. They don't always move from nearest neighbor to nearest neighbor. Sometimes they jump across great distances through unexpected connections. Lisa Murphy, the teacher, was looking at the timeline of infections. It reminds me of how children learn bad habits. You think you've contained the problem in one area, but then it pops up somewhere else because kids share things in ways adults don't expect. Crix watched this discussion with growing amazement. The humans were approaching the problem from completely different angles, all at the same time. And somehow, it was starting to make sense. You think the plague is learning? He asked. Jake turned to him. We think it might be trying to communicate. Communicate what? That's what we need to find out, Amy said. But first, we need to understand what it really is. Dr. Chun pulled up her analysis. Based on the data, I don't think this is a plague at all. At least, not in the traditional sense. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Plagues destroy things. Dr. Chun explained. But look at what this thing actually does. It doesn't destroy ships that enter the system. It changes them. It integrates them into itself. Professor Kim leaned forward, like it's trying to make something, building toward some goal. Maria Santos showed her sketch to the group. It looked like a complex network with nodes and connections spreading outward. What if it's not spreading randomly? What if it's building a communication network? Dr. Wright studied the sketch. A network that spans multiple dimensions. That would explain how it can jump between systems with no apparent connection. Lisa Murphy raised her hand like she was still in her classroom. Can I ask a simple question? Everyone turned to her. If it's trying to communicate, has anyone tried to talk back to it? The room fell silent. Ambassador Veltar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. In 400 years of study, no one has ever tried to communicate with it. Why not? Lisa asked. Because, Veltar said slowly, we assumed it was just a destructive force. We never considered that it might be intelligent. Jake stood up. Then that's where we start. We go to the Kepler system, and we try to talk to it. Crick stepped forward. That's incredibly dangerous. Every ship that has entered that system has been lost. Not lost, Jake corrected. Changed. Integrated. Maybe that's exactly what we need to do. Captain Stone looked worried. Jake, we don't know what it will do to us. No, Jake agreed. But we know what it's been doing for 400 years without anyone trying to understand it. Maybe it's time to take a different approach. Amy was already running calculations on her tablet. If we're right about this being a communication attempt, then the integration process might be the plague trying to create a translation interface. You mean it's been trying to talk to us all along? Professor Kim said. But we've been running away instead of listening. Jake looked around the room at the mix of humans and aliens. There's only one way to find out. Crix was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. If you are going to do this, you will need protection. I thought you said you couldn't guard against humans, Amy said. I cannot guard against what humans are, Crix replied. But perhaps I can learn to guard alongside what humans do. Jake extended his hand to the big alien. Partners? Crix looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out and shook it. His claws were careful not to scratch Jake's skin. Partners, he agreed. Now let us go hunt this problem together. Ambassador Veltar watched this exchange with wonder. In all his years of diplomacy, he had never seen anything like it. A species so dangerous that apex predators fled from them, working together with those same predators to solve an impossible problem. Maybe, he thought, this was exactly what the galaxy needed. The joint human-alien fleet approached the Kepler system slowly. Jake stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the distorted readings on the sensors. Beside him, Crick studied the data with the focused attention of a hunter tracking dangerous prey. The interference is getting stronger, Captain Stone reported. We're still 3 light hours out, but our instruments are already showing anomalies. Dr. Amy Foster worked at a science station with Dr. Chun and Professor Kim. They had spent the entire journey developing their theory about the plague's true nature. Now they were about to test it. Remember, Jake said over the communication, system to all ships, we're not here to fight this thing. We're here to understand it. Ambassador Veltar's voice came through the speakers from his ship. The Federation Council is monitoring this mission very closely. They are prepared to evacuate the entire sector if necessary. It won't be necessary, Jake said with more confidence than he felt Dot as they moved closer to the system. Strange things began to happen. The ship's lights flickered in patterns that almost seemed like code. The gravity fluctuated in rhythmic pulses. Even the air recycling system started making musical sounds. "It's trying to communicate," Lisa Murphy said excitedly. She had been monitoring all the ship's systems, looking for patterns. "Look at this." She showed her readings to the group. The fluctuations in different systems were following the same basic pattern, but each one was slightly different. "It's like it's learning our language," she explained. "Each system it affects, it gets a little better at making patterns we might recognize." Maria Santos had been sketching the light patterns. "These look almost like mathematical sequences, but not quite. Like someone trying to copy math without understanding what numbers mean." Dr. Wright was studying the biological effects on the crew. "Our heart rates are synchronizing. Not in a harmful way, but like the ship is trying to match our rhythms." Jake felt a strange calm come over him. "It's not trying to hurt us. It's trying to understand us." They entered the outer edge of the Kepler system. Immediately, more systems began to show effects. But instead of failing, they seemed to be improving. The engines ran smoother. The sensors became more sensitive. The communication array picked up signals they had never detected before. "This is impossible," Dr. Chun whispered. "It's upgrading our technology as it integrates with it." Crix's claws extended slightly, a sign of stress. But his voice was steady. "I can feel it studying us, learning how we think." "Let it," Jake said. "We're here to learn too." As they approached the first planet, the effects intensified. The ship's computer began displaying images none of them had programmed. Mathematical formulas that made no sense. Star charts of galaxies they didn't recognize. And then suddenly, words, not in any human or Federation language, but somehow everyone understood them. "Help. Trapped. Alone. Please." The bridge fell silent. Captain Stone's hands hovered over the controls, ready to retreat if necessary. But Jake stepped forward. "We're here to help," he said aloud. "Can you understand us?" The ship's lights pulsed once. "Yes." "What are you trapped by?" Images flooded the displays. They showed the Kepler system as it had been 400 years ago. A thriving civilization across 5 planets. Then something else appeared. A massive structure in space, artificial but unlike anything any known species had built. "A prison," Professor Kim breathed. Something built a prison around this entire system. More images came. The prison wasn't meant to contain the people of Kepler. It was meant to contain something else. Something that had been sleeping in the depths of space for millions of years. The Kepler civilization had accidentally awakened it while conducting deep space experiments. The plague isn't a disease, Amy realized. It's a prison guard. It's been trying to keep something locked up for 400 years. And it's been trying to get help, Jake added. Every ship that came here, it tried to communicate with. But they all ran away before it could finish explaining. The thing in the prison was getting stronger. The images showed it pushing against the barriers, testing for weaknesses. The plague had been using the ships and equipment it integrated to reinforce the prison walls. But it's not strong enough, Dr. Chon said, studying the data. The prison is failing. What happens if that thing gets out? Crix asked. The answer came in more images. Other star systems, other civilizations, all reduced to empty space. The creature in the prison was ancient and hungry. It consumed entire worlds, not for food, but for the simple pleasure of destruction. How long until the prison fails completely? Jake asked. The answer appeared as numbers on the screen. Less than 1 year. Jake looked around at his team. Then he activated the communication system to speak with all the ships in their fleet. "This is what we're going to do," he said. "We're going to solve this problem the human way. We're going to learn everything we can about this prison, about the creature inside it, and about the intelligence that's been guarding it. Then we're going to find a better solution." Over the next several days, something amazing happened. The plague, which they now understood, was actually an artificial intelligence created by the dying Kepler civilization, began sharing its knowledge freely. It showed them technologies they had never imagined. It taught them about dimensions of space that Federation science had never discovered. In return, the humans and their alien partners shared their own knowledge. They showed the intelligence new ways of thinking about problems, different approaches to engineering and physics and mathematics. Working together, they began to design something that had never been tried before. Not a prison to contain the ancient destroyer, but a redirect system that would send it somewhere it could exist without harming anyone. "There," Dr. Chun said, pointing to a section of space on the star charts. "A dimensional rift leading to a universe where nothing exists but empty space and dark matter. It can have all the destruction it wants without hurting anyone." The intelligence that had been called a plague pulsed with something that felt like hope. Building the redirect system required resources from dozens of worlds and the combined knowledge of every species in the Federation. Ambassador Veltar found himself coordinating the largest construction project in galactic history. But the humans had proved their point. Their ability to hunt problems and find solutions wasn't a threat to the galaxy. It was exactly what the galaxy needed. When the redirect system was finally activated, the ancient destroyer was pulled from its weakening prison and sent away to its empty universe. The intelligence that had guarded the prison for so long was finally free to rest, but it chose to stay active. It had learned to enjoy solving problems alongside humans and aliens. It requested permission to join the Federation as its first artificial intelligence member. Jake stood once again in the central chamber of the diplomatic station where this had all begun. But now the room was filled with representatives from dozens of species. And beside him stood Crix, no longer his opponent, but his partner. "The Federation Council has voted," Ambassador Veltar announced. "Humanity is granted not just membership, but partnership status. You will work with all member species to identify and solve the greatest challenges facing our galaxy." Jake smiled. "We accept, but we want to make something clear. We don't want to replace anyone. We want to work with everyone. Humans are good at hunting problems, but we're even better at hunting them together with friends." Crix spoke up from beside him. "I have a request to make of the Council." All eyes turned to the massive Drakmori. "I wish to resign my position as a bodyguard and request assignment as a cultural liaison between my species and humanity. I believe we have much to learn from each other." The Council approved the request immediately. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Amy found Jake and Crix standing together at the observation window. "So what's next?" she asked. Jake looked out at the stars. "Well, the intelligence from Kepler mentioned that there are other ancient problems scattered around the galaxy, things that civilizations have been dealing with for thousands of years." Crix's yellow eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement. "Problems that need hunting," Amy grinned. "I can't wait to get started." Outside the window, the stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter. The galaxy was full of mysteries and challenges and impossible problems waiting to be solved. And now, for the first time in galactic history, there was a species that saw impossible problems not as threats to be avoided, but as adventures to be embraced. The apex predator Bodyguard had been right to be afraid of humans, but he had also been right to join them. Because the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't humanity's ability to hunt problems, it was their ability to turn former enemies into partners in the hunt. And that, Ambassador Veltar reflected as he watched humans and aliens working together. To plan their next impossible mission was perhaps the most human thing of all. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.